This is the Kev Baker Show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is that time of day again. I'm your host, Kev Baker. That's right, you're tuned in live to tonight's broadcast of the Kev Baker Show, right here on the network that you all love, www.truthfrequencyradio.com. Hope you're all ready for what is going to be an absolutely magnificent show tonight. We've got Christopher Everard and his co-host Scotty Lopez on the show tonight. We're going to be going over Trump's version of the New World Order, Brexit, the breakup of the EU superstate, and so much more. It's going to make your heads hurt. But Johnny Whistles is back with us tonight, so hit share, get all your friends in here in the next couple of minutes so you can hear all the latest and greatest breaking news about all of those topics. But Johnny, before we go to our cracking two guests tonight, man, you're back with us. How you doing, brother?
I'm back and doing well, Kev. Thanks very much. Looking forward to tonight. I mean, two amazing guests, Kev. We've got the walking encyclopedia, and we've got the man that with the IQ that I could only dream of. Fantastic, Kev.
Exactly. And firstly, Scotty Lopez, welcome, brother. You're here tonight. Mr. Everard's co-host. You looking forward to this one, man?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for inviting me back on, man.
Oh, it's going to be absolutely brilliant. So let's go to the main guest tonight, Mr. Christopher Everard. You can find his work over at christophereverard.co.uk. Chris, welcome back to the show, my man. And we're tonight because everything is going tonto right now.
Yeah, we're living in very, very interesting times. I want to say I'm very pleased to do these shows with you guys. There doesn't seem to be... Well, I mean, I scan through the airwaves and, you know, I always look for interesting shows, and there doesn't ever seem to be anything quite like this kind of mixture that we put together here on these shows. Yeah, I wanted to do a show which is really going to put a lot of people straight, I hope, because there seems to be a lot of people that were on track in terms of their own personal research into the New World Order. And Mr. Trump came along, and now these people seem to be siding with the Democrats and with the liberals and with Hillary Clinton, which is absolutely ridiculous. They seem to be siding with the protesters who are on the streets. And to give you a little kind of snippet of the types of things that, you know, I want to say in this show, how can anyone in their right mind support the protesters out on the street when it comes down to brass tacks? Hillary was the Illuminati candidate. You know, she had all the funding from Goldman Sachs. I'm not saying that that Donald Trump is whiter than white. There's no such thing as a president or a prime minister who is whiter than white. But if you want to look at the history, the recent history of this election that we've just undergone, you can see that the primary Illuminati candidate on the Republican side was Jeb Bush. You couldn't get a better Illuminati glove puppet than Jeb Bush. He had all the Lockheed Martin money, all the McDonnell Douglas money, you know, all of the arms manufacturing money. He was the baby Bush, and he was there ready to be the glove puppet on the Republican side, because really what these elections have turned into, up until Mr. Trump came along, is a fake Punch and Judy show. And what they wanted to do, and what the BBC was promoting months and months, if not a year and a half before the election took place, what the BBC were promoting is, oh, look at this. Look, how interesting. It's going to be yet another Bush versus Clinton election.
Exactly, Chris. And, you know, during that build-up to the election itself, it was the treatment that the media gave Donald Trump that gave me the first alert that we might be looking at somebody that they view as a problem. And that was very, very refreshing. And then we look at the way he spoke at the campaigns, at the debates. It's great. And despite what we were all talking about before the show when I was laying out some of my fears, I am quite on the Trump train because he sounds like one of us. And he's the latest character to come along, Chris, like Nigel Farage, who is acting as a voice of the people. It's what people
are exactly.
Thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head with Nigel Farage, because this is another thing, okay? Because there's a lot of people on my Facebook page, got nearly 30,000 followers there, and a lot of them are anti-Trump. But a lot of them do understand the New World Order. They do understand that wars are engineered. They do understand that the economy is all rigged. They do understand that parliaments around the world are all rigged. They understand that politicians take bribes. They know about Pizzagate. They know about the Eton Westminster sex crime syndicates. They know about the New World Order in general. They know how it works. And then Trump comes along, and then they all turn into anti-Trumpster type people. The thing is this, is that even before Trump got into power, TPP was scrapped. He had no support for TPP. Now, one of the aspects of TPP was that you couldn't introduce any legislation, you couldn't introduce a bill in the Senate or in any parliament of any country that was a signatory to the TPP that challenged in any way whatsoever corporations like Monsanto. The Monsanto Act is the archetypal piece of corporate legislation, which is the marker or the datum point of which all legislation will be judged in the future. They want legislation that gives them immunity of prosecution, which is why we've got 800,000 Romanian people out on the streets of Romania right now. Why are they there? And by the way, this isn't the first time that Romanian people have caused regime change. If you remember, during the typical kind of communist, it's all a stage act. Obviously, communism is just as fake as everything else. But Ceausescu went out there, he was giving his long speech, and he realized, somebody whispered in his ear, hey, this crowd, they're not cheering you, they're booing you. And he was taken around the back, and him and his wife were shot through the head. Now the Romanians are out on the street again. What are they protesting? They're protesting a new set of laws that give immunity of prosecution to every government official. Well, we've got that in England. The royal family have got that. You can't arrest a member of the royal family on any royal property. You can't grab a royal person's goods and sell them with a bailiff like they can to you. Any minister or any privy councillor has immunity of prosecution. The police can't knock on their door and say, excuse me, we've got these 50 or 60 people here are all alleging that, you committed sex crimes against them, in the 1980s, and can we step in and have a word with you? Can't do it. That's immunity of prosecution, and it's enjoyed by the political elite. And in Romania, they tried to bring it in, and look what's happened. It's rather like Iceland, where the Icelandic people went out on the streets after the Panama Papers. So, TPP was basically scrapped by Trump. He refused to continue the legacy of the final stages of the negotiation.
See, that's just me as well, Chris, because TPP is something that ourselves and the alternative media, we really went on about it ad nauseum, how bad it is.
Yeah.
And yet here comes a character, comes along, scraps it, and they still can't trust him.
Well, absolutely. You see, the thing is that we are dealing with a situation here. I have to say this, and, I want to come across as being fair about it. There are a lot of people, you see, in 1993, I came across a documentary that was called Millennium 2000. It was presented by Anthony Hilder. That was the year that Anthony made it. And you had Jordan Maxwell, Anthony, and a Christian guy. And it was really a very, very good documentary. It really woke me up to how the Americans are perceiving this New World Order. I mean, I already understood Freemasonry. I already understood that politics was all a scam, and I already understood that the so-called diplomatic service is actually a euphemism for spying. I'd already read all the Ian Fleming novels, and I was already well aware that diplomatic bags were basically being used to ferry drugs around. So I came to the New World Order through that whole world of espionage and diplomacy and stuff like that. But 1993, Millennium 2000 was presented by Anthony Hilder, and there we see Jordan Maxwell, who I had never come across before, and he was giving a lot of interesting information. But what I saw in years to come is that, Jordan wasn't so, his crosshairs had moved away somewhat, and his information was repetitive and fuzzy. Now, that's my opinion. I don't mean to be insulting to Jordan Maxwell, but, you come across a book by someone and you think, wow, that book is spot on. And then you read their next book and you think, that's not quite, that doesn't really sit well with me, or I don't agree with those types of opinions. And so we're dealing with shifting sands here. What I can say is that from 1993, the first wave of people that I interviewed for my first series of Illuminati documentaries, exposing the Illuminati and exposing this global network of secret societies, that first wave of researchers and authors, they've kind of all fallen by the wayside. I mean, for example, when WikiLeaks was launched, I remember David Icke publishing stuff on his blog saying, you can't trust WikiLeaks. You got to be, why are they famous? Why is Julian Assange more famous than me? Type of editorials. Well, as we can see with this last election, if it hadn't been for WikiLeaks and it hadn't been for them being a platform that Seth Rich, the guy that leaked the Democratic Party emails to, if it wasn't for having WikiLeaks, we wouldn't know about Pizzagate.
Exactly, Chris. And I don't want to get fully onto the Trump train. I'm running alongside it, but I don't want to commit too early because I want to scrutinize everything he does. And a lot of people say that Trump isn't the answer. And I don't think any one man is the answer, but I think Trump is the chance to give the people the power back. If that makes sense.
I mean, look at Brexit. Brexit, I mean, everyone can see that Brexit was rigged. Okay, they spent £9 million on a propaganda leaflet. This is Cameron. The Remain and Leave campaigns were under the control of the two top Tories, Cameron and Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson's father is a former European Member of Parliament. Boris Johnson's family have profited millions out of being members of the European Union. So it's all a scam. And along comes Nigel Farage. Now, Nigel Farage, as I said, he must be the most hated politician by Buckingham Palace because it is Buckingham Palace that is behind the European Union. Make no mistake about that. If you're new to listening to Kev's show, I know that might sound strange to you. Do your research. You can trace it back to Bilderberg. You can trace Bilderberg back to the Nazi era. You can trace the funding for the Nazis back to one man who is a British prince, Prince Charlie Coburg, Carl Edward Coburg, Queen Victoria's favourite grandson, brought up in Britain. This man funded Nazism. And then after Nazism, we had then the Duke of Edinburgh's best mate, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. He convened the first Bilderberg meeting. And from the Bilderbergers, we then got the European Union. And from the European common market, we now have this incredibly corrupt organization that's totally undemocratic, where every single major minister in Europe is pro-Israeli. Martin Schulz has even gone on the media saying the only reason why modern Germany exists is to serve Israel.
And you know, Chris, there's parallels here, because we had Farage, he was our spearhead. Then we had Trump, the pond. And, you know, they did have it all set up, and we've gone over election rigging in the past. And you were the man that brilliantly pointed out the fact that the only thing that can trump, pardon the pun, an actual rigged election is if there's a landslide. And we've seen Farage and Trump really hit what the people wanted to hear. And that landslide came. And that brings fake news as well, because if they had been honest news, it wouldn't have come as such a surprise, either the Brexit result or Trump, because we would have seen the real polls and we would have known a long time before the elections what was coming.
Yeah. I mean, look, if Trump was a New World Order stooge, which is what all of these people are posting on my Facebook page, why would he take time out of his diary, out of his busy schedule, to put pressure on Downing Street and say, hey, give Nigel Farage a job? Exactly. It wouldn't happen. If Trump was in the pocket of the Illuminati, he wouldn't even associate with Nigel Farage. So, you know, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Also, all these same people were, you know, before the election, during the election, they were saying, oh, there's no point in voting. No point in voting at all. Why do you vote? Your vote means nothing. And they were posting all these things with Stalin, which is a true quote, you know, those who count the votes have all the power. Those who cast the votes have no power at all. Fair enough. I mean, Stalin, you know, he is a bad dude, and he murdered, you know, his son-in-law murdered literally tens of millions of people. And that quote is real. And, you know, elections are rigged. No two ways about it. But that joint that a lot of the listeners are smoking is now legal in a lot of their states because of voting. So voting does change things. If you've got people power and you've got a landslide, like you say, Kev, it does change stuff.
It certainly does. And it was you that came on here and told us about that, because I'm somebody that's really disillusioned with politics, but between Brexit and the Trump election, well, I mean, I can't deny now that people power can have an effect. I'd be insane to say that it can't work.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what, it goes back to way before Brexit. People power had already kicked off in Italy, basically, with Beppe Grillo, who is not a politician. Beppe Grillo is a comedian. And through satire, he was exposing corruption in the Berlusconi government. And then we had all of the revelations about the so-called bunga parties, you know, with Berlusconi. And, you know, that was going back now 2011, 2012. And Berlusconi owns a third of all of the radio and television and newspapers in Italy, but he also owns a third of all the media in France as well.
Wow, and you know, there's a comedian starting this, and it makes me think back to the real olden days in the past, Chris, when we had jesters and things like that. And they were able to speak out against the people in power at the time. And it's almost like an echo in history here. Here we have a comedian able to use satire to get people to question what's going on around them.
Well, that's right. I mean, Shakespeare is rammed down your throat. I mean, I studied English literature, and I have to say that very few of the books, I would say 99% of the actual curriculum books that we were told to study, I hated them with a vengeance. And I don't like Shakespeare, and I don't respect Shakespeare. And, you know, when I'm chatting about literature with mates of mine, they're pretty astounded when I say that. And I used to stand up in class and I used to say, look, you know, I really don't like the Shakespeare thing. Of course, now we know that Shakespeare wasn't a single person. It was a school of Shakespeare, and Shakespeare was Jewish. He was an entrepreneur. He would make money not only about staging these plays, but his big earner was selling all the refreshments. So he was a bit of a P.T. Barnum at the Globe in London.
Sounds a bit like CNN. I mean, they put on a show for everyone, absolute lies, and then coin in off all the adverts. Johnny Whistles, you're wanting to jump in here, man.
Well, it was actually just thinking of adverts there, Kev. I was watching Ancient Aliens today, and during the break, one of the ads was export is good. And it was showing you all of these countries and speaking to the people who will do exports, imports with Britain. And it's the first time I've really seen that, Kevin. We're talking about Brexit. Does these kind of adverts mean that Brexit is definitely going to go through?
Well, this is the thing, Chris. I mean, we've opened up trade now. We've been speaking to Trump. We've been speaking to New Zealand, I believe. And Britain, if we get away from this euro, we've got a real opportunity here, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, this trade thing is nothing more than a fancy dress ballet that's being put on to fool people. That it's going to take, Article 50 doesn't say it takes 2 years to leave the European Union. It says that the process must be completed in a period not longer than 2 years. Now, as I say, European single market, which obviously was a lie, was a scam from the beginning to the end. £220 million a week is stolen from British workers' wage packets and is sent over to Brussels. And that's, done to fuel a gravy train of yes men, faceless bureaucrats. Rompuy and Martin Schulz and Donald Tusk and all these people are faceless, and you can't remember what they look like because they've been chosen that way. That is what that type of Eurocrat needs to look like. Now, the total budget that the European Union spends on itself is around 300 million euros, which is roughly $300 million every day. That's their total budget. In actual fact, there's an ebook that you can download written by somebody who used to be an insider at the EEC, and it's called, the title of the book is How We Get Along Surviving on 397 million euros per day. Now, where is that money going? Because it sure as hell is not being invested in any major infrastructure. What is going on is bottles of champagne at lunch that cost 1,600 quid, and lunches in what I have to say are pretty mediocre restaurants in Brussels, where a flat sole fish, they're charging you 85 quid for lunch, and it's not even cooked properly. This is it. The money's it's going on prostitution, rackets. It's going on, some of these Euro MEP Eurocrats, they have entire tower blocks of apartments which they have mortgages on. And the corruption there is unbelievable.
Exactly. And we're talking here as well generally about Trump's New World Order. And the old New World Order would have been super states like the EU, like NAFTA over in the US as well. But this New World Order that we're going to be seeing now then, is this going to be based on nation states? What kind of redrawing of this New World Order are we looking at here?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just take his speech at the inauguration as a guide, and he says, today I am transferring the power from Washington to you. And I was pretty amazed at that speech. Of course, all the cynics and all the people who are now supporting, in ipso facto, they're supporting Goldman Sachs and Hillary. Every single person who criticizes Trump is playing into the pockets of Goldman Sachs. they're playing into the pockets of the Democratic Party. But when I saw him do that speech, I thought, wow, this is going to be interesting. To be honest, Kev, not every prime minister or every president is a glove puppet. We saw that with JFK. The Kennedy cabal, and that's what they were. The father, Joseph Kennedy, had been the ambassador to the Royal Court of St. James's, which is what they call Buckingham Palace in the diplomatic world of America. Joseph Kennedy had made a lot of money from prohibition. Oh, we're running out of time.
And there we are. That's the end of the first half, and join us just in a couple of minutes.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, everyone. We are live on tonight's broadcast of the Kev Baker Show. We're moving into part 2 of the show now with Mr. Christopher Everard. We've got Scotty Lopez as well, and of course my co-host Johnny Whistles. And I'm your host, Kev Baker. Now, before we go back to Chris, here we are talking about Trump's New World Order 2.0. And just me saying that will bring me barrels of hate over on YouTube. And that's how divisive this character is. Like I've said, I do like him. And for as genuine as he is, that elite cabal, they will always try and fight back somehow. And we'll be getting into some of the ways that might happen as the show goes on and a lot more. But let's go to Scott first of all, because Scotty, we touched on the TPP, one of the first acts that Donald Trump done. And he basically fulfilled one of his campaign promises, along with many others. And you were sharing your thoughts about the TPP during the break.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the TPP got scrapped and that Trump basically destroyed any, destroyed that from happening. I mean, that was an absolutely devastating blow to the New World Order, because that was the first step in merging Asia and North America economically. And if you study the New World Order's, agenda, the first step is to merge the globe economically, and then you slowly destroy sovereignty and you get a New World Order out of that. Well, the fact that he completely ruined that for them just right there tells you that, that's a slap in the face to the New World Order. I mean, that was a big, big move he made. I would say that was probably one of the most important things he did, was to stop the TPP, because the TPP would absolutely destroy American jobs. It would destroy, it would have been completely devastating, because in the TPP, you could take, it allowed for workers to be brought from much poorer Asian countries and allow them to work in the United States at the same wages that they're being paid in those countries. So can you imagine that? I mean, it was just a horrible, horrible thing. And the fact that he completely got rid of that, just that in itself, I think is a very, very big, a very big move against the New World Order. And as far as trade and stuff goes, this is a thing that kind of crossed over among a lot of the people on the left, especially the people who supported Bernie Sanders. They didn't want the TPP either. And Trump actually aligned with them as far as things like NAFTA and trade goes. And you don't see them congratulating Trump on, on basically stopping the TPP from happening now. He actually took a lot of Democratic voters away from Hillary because of that. Remember, it was Hillary that said that the TPP was the gold standard. That was her quote right there. So it was definitely a big, big move against the New World Order. Getting rid of the TPP.
And one of his other campaign promises, Chris, and this has been weaponized by those very elites who are now in defeat, and it's something that they call the travel ban. Now, this is protests breaking out across the world, and just calling it a travel ban, that in itself, I mean, it's fake news, because he promised to secure the borders, and this is one of his first steps. Now, I do have some problems with it. Not that he's done it, but some of the countries that he's left off the list, like Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, a lot of the listeners probably saw my post last week. I've done a whole week load of posts basically exposing jihadism. And jihadism is, it's a bit like Tony Blair came along and he invented New Labour. And it wasn't just a catchphrase. He actually rewrote what socialism meant in Britain. And now, looking back, obviously, we can see that the Blair era and the Blair governments was probably the most politically damaging period of breaking down British society.
You're right.
And,
beyond religion, they've basically turned it into a political ideology, which comes.
Yeah. I mean, jihadism, for a start, I mean, I travel a lot. I'm doing the Forbidden TV series at the moment. And I've been traveling and traveling and traveling and traveling. I'm doing loads of countries, okay? And I've been filming in lots of Muslim countries. I've filmed in the middle of nowhere in places like Morocco. I've been down to the border between Mauritania and Morocco. Mauritania is a very mysterious country. Nobody really knows very much about it. I've been into war zones. I've been to Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt. None of these countries are 100% Islamic for a start. There's 6.5 million or 7 million Coptic Christians in Egypt. There's a huge number of Jewish people who live side by side with Arabians and Berber people in Morocco. Until Saddam Hussein was financed by the Foreign Office in Britain, because he was a glove puppet dictator as well, until he came along, Jewish people were running the treasury and all the oil deals of Iraq, the Sassoon family, the Kardashians. These people are Iraqi Jews, and there was a huge number of Jewish people in Iraq. Even today, there are large numbers of Jewish people living in Iran. So none of these countries are 100% Islamic. They're not 100% Jewish. That's just a misnomer that's put across in the media. Now, because you've got large numbers, and I'm talking about millions of Christians in a lot of those countries that are on the travel ban, and the travel ban is not permanent. It's only 120 days. Really, all of these judgments and these unelected judges, oh my God, we've just had 3 weeks solid of seeing unelected judges. I mean, what is a judge? It's a person who never speaks on the media, never goes on to political debate shows like this, wears a wig and woman's tights, and is able to block the will of the people. We've seen it with Brexit, and we've seen it with the travel ban. Frankly, these judges are blocking the democratic tidal wave, the movements that Brexit triggered, Nigel Farage triggered it, and Donald Trump triggered it. And these judges should not be allowed to actually have a say in landslide social movements, which is what we're dealing with now. And one person wearing, funny shoes and women's tights can stop Brexit. Do me a favour.
And another dude wearing a silly costume, the Speaker of the House. What do you make of Berkow's little outburst about Donald Trump speaking to Parliament and coming to the EU?
Yeah. Well, what I can say is that the petition system has been really well exposed. We've had hackers, if you like. They're not really hackers. They're just clever people who can actually look at the source code of the Her Majesty's petition system, and we can see that there was something like 40,000 postcodes of Vatican City on 40,000 signatures on one of those petitions. It's just a joke, the petition to stop Donald Trump from entering Britain. That for me is just totally, I don't even want to waste airtime over it. Those petitions are rigged. If you want to get a petition going, and I got a petition going that caused a U-turn on the British government's policies of cutting the benefits for disabled people, in actual fact, I left my petition page up on my own personal website because it's a bit of a historical page there, because it actually resulted in George Osborne being fired, which I'm very proud of. But petitions, you should be running your own petition without a deadline, collect the signatures yourself and deliver them properly and follow it through. These automated petition systems like the government's got, they are deliberately open to manipulation by MI5. And there you go. I've said it.
Chris, well, let's just jump off the Trump train for a moment, because like I say, I do have a few issues with him. One being the fact that he's so cozy with Netanyahu and Israel. And, we've seen him in the first days of him being in there, drawing this kind of line on Iran because of a missile test. And now I'm seeing that he's ready to approve arms sales to Saudi Arabia as well. Now, these were previous sales that were blocked by Obama because of human rights violations. So what do you make of his relationship, with Israel, and his stance on some things in the Middle East?
Okay, well, the first thing is that the biggest arms deals in the history of the arms manufacturing world have actually gone on in Saudi Arabia. The most famous one is called the Al Armani arms deal. Now, no money changes hands. Okay, when you see a report on the BBC or CNN and it says, such and such hundreds of millions of dollars in fighter jets and this type of thing are all being shipped off to Saudi Arabia, there is actually no money in most of these cases. There's no money being paid for those fighter jets. It is an exchange for oil. That's what's going on. And then those arms manufacturers who actually manufacturing the nuts and bolts hardware that is shipped to Saudi Arabia, what's happening is that the government are swapping their stock or their government bonds with the stock share certificates of those arms manufacturers. I mean, it's a complicated thing. It's what Margaret Thatcher's son was doing when Margaret Thatcher was in Downing Street. Mark Thatcher was very much involved in all these kinds of international relations and international arms deals. Jacques Chirac's brother was basically an arms dealer. It's a huge market. The kickbacks are... So the kickbacks on just setting up one of these deals are so enormous, Kev. It's ridiculous. You're not talking about somebody getting £1 million as a kickback. They're getting 15, 20, 25 million just for an introduction. And it makes you wonder, what in actual fact is Saudi Arabia going to do with all this weaponry? Well, as we can see from the WikiLeaks emails, we can see John Podesta actually writing an email which Hillary Clinton is copied into, and he's saying that ISIS is clandestinely funded by the royal family of Saudi Arabia. And it just so happens that it's Saudi Arabia which are buying all of these guns, 20mm rounds, 9mm rounds, mortars, the very, very sophisticated radar-guided mortar systems. I mean, the arms industry is it's like the industrial version of pornography. Actually, when communism collapsed, or it was rigged to collapse, I should say, with perestroika, they actually found in the Ukraine and Belarus and the satellite communist satellite nations, Tajikistan, Kurdistan, they found entire complexes of silos and warehouses that had not millions of dollars worth of arms that was stacked up, but hundreds of millions of dollars worth of arms. In actual fact, I published just at Christmas these amazing photographs from Tajikistan and Kurdistan, where you can see entire space shuttles. These are the Russian space shuttles just left rusting in these warehouses.
Wow. Now, what about Israel then, Chris? Because he seems very,
Right.
very cozy with Netanyahu.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would like to say is that the Trumpster haters on Facebook, as soon as Jared Kushner, who is the son-in-law of Donald Trump, was given a role in the administration, they started saying, "Oh, look, he's got a Jewish guy there." If you read Donald Trump's books, okay, especially The Art of the Deal, and if you look at the old documentaries about, the Trump real estate kind of empire, you can see that Donald Trump's father was very successful on the outskirts of New York. But the inner center of Manhattan is like the blue chip real estate business. And it was all a monopoly, literally like the Monopoly board. And it was all monopolized by Jewish business people. And what Donald Trump Jr., today's Donald Trump did, is he took a small loan from his dad, a relatively small loan, about $1 million or more than that, and he actually started to invest in real estate in Manhattan. And he was the first person to break that Jewish real estate monopoly. And that's how he made really essentially a lot of money, because, that's where you can maximize your profits by 100-fold, not just a 10-fold, like his father had done on the outskirts near places like Brooklyn.
Let's bring Scotty here quickly, because Scotty, I know you've got something to add to this. And I mean, I sometimes get a bit too hot under the collar when it comes to Palestine, Israel, and I sometimes miss some of the stories that are going by. And you found a new one, or it was new information to me before the show about settlements, didn't you?
Oops, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I mean, Trump is actually, criticizing Israel on building new settlements, and he said, hey, look, this might not help bring peace. And what I think you're seeing here is Trump sort of cozying up to Israel to sort of get them back at the table to work out some kind of a peace deal with Palestine, because you're never going to get anybody at the table if you continue to do things that anger, you have to get them at the table. So, whether it be, cozying up the relationship a little bit, kind of getting relations a little bit better, because let's be honest, the relationship between Israel and the Obama administration was not that good. If Obama ever wanted to try to do some kind of a peace deal between Israel and Palestine, well, Israel wasn't even going to come to the table because of the way the relationship between the two were. So I think you're seeing that. And as far as like Trump's foreign policy goes, as in the Middle East, I think this is an area where you see possible manipulation going on with within the people that have been surrounding him. As far as economically and stuff, I think Trump is really on it. But as far as foreign policy goes, I think the administration has been somewhat infiltrated by neocons, and I think that they're able to kind of move him in a direction, a neocon direction, as far as like saber rattling with Iran and stuff like that. And so I don't know yet. He needs to kind of put his foot down and tell these people that are trying to get him to involve himself into some kind of a conflict in the Middle East. He needs to go, no, this is not what we're going to do, because I honestly don't think that Trump really realizes the game plan there as far as the New World Order goes. I mean, I don't know if he's aware of the Wolfowitz Doctrine or the Project for a New American Century that the Rand Corporation put out. I think these are things that he needs to study and realize that this is an area that he could possibly be manipulated on, and that he could end up becoming involved in a conflict that he doesn't really want to be involved in. And, what better way to prevent him from achieving his goals domestically than to get him involved in a conflict, a foreign conflict, and get him hired down there. So I think that's something that he needs to be made aware of. He needs to look out for this sort of neocon influence pushing him to do things as far as foreign policy wise.
Well, before we move back to Chris, Johnny, your thoughts on what we've been talking about there, man?
Well, you're talking about the Israelis, Kevin. We're talking about these people are actually denying Palestinians of electricity, water, heating, you name it, building materials. Every time anything happens with the Palestinian and the Israeli talks, something usually happens before it, and then the talks are cancelled. And it's all manipulated from Israel. They don't want any peace whatsoever in Palestine. That's the thing that gets me about Donald Trump approving anything like that.
Your thoughts, Chris?
I agree with Scotty, and I agree with Johnny. As you know, I've made a lot of in-depth documentaries and really studied the history of, what Israel really is. And what Israel is, the present-day political kind of entity that we call Israel, is in actual fact a legitimized, fully funded version of the Brotherhoods of the Tophet. Now, you can type in this word, T-O-P-H-E-T, into Wikipedia, and it will show you what these people were doing in the old Israel. And it was public torture of non-Brotherhood children. There was a movie made in 1921 called Cerebria. It's a black and white silent movie that shows children being sexually tortured in public and then chucked into the flames. Babylonian Satanism was a legitimate and powerful network of brotherhoods, and I'm afraid that's what Zionism is. Zionism is fueled by very well-connected politicians who believe that they have the right to exert their will over the rest of the population of planet Earth. They believe that they are born as the chosen people who can manipulate the economies and the lives of literally billions of other people. And they believe that these scriptures are real. One part of the scriptures actually says that in the future, every Jewish person will have 200,000 non-Jewish Gentiles serving them as slaves.
Wow.
Now, I'm not making this up. You can do your research. As I say, you type in the word T-O-P-H-E-T into Wikipedia. Maybe Johnny or Scott wants to do it now. Excuse me. And you can see that, what we've got with Israel is we've got a modern manifestation of this highly racist, chosen people kind of ideology. And it's really a very, very serious situation. If you want to talk to me about the Illuminati, that is what it is. It's a race, if you like, of people who are using, they're using scripture, which they've created themselves, to validate mass killing. And I'm not talking about just ordinary killing. I'm talking about public torture, sexual exploitation of literally billions of people on planet Earth. And so I think it's a very, very serious situation. Look at JFK. JFK's big mistake was that he allowed Lyndon B. Johnson and Lyndon B. Johnson's mafia to have the job of being vice president. And what did Lyndon B. Johnson do? He got Sam Giancana and a team of assassins, along with the CIA, George Bush Sr., and all these movers and shakers like Leslie Lynch King. Nobody really knows him by his name, but he's known as President Gerald Ford, but that's a fake name. His real name is Leslie Lynch King. And they all ganged up on JFK, and they did an assassination and pinned it on Lee Harvey Oswald. And I'm really worried about Donald Trump. I'm really worried about his security. We've had the Pizzagate artist.
I am too. I'm worried too about it, especially.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a false flag.
Yeah, especially if he doesn't start falling in line with this neocon agenda, at least foreign policy wise. I think you're really going to have to, I'm worried about it. It's just, there's something in the back of my mind that has been bothering me.
We're going to see a false flag. I think the way they're going to do it is they're going to stage something as big as 9/11. They're going to blame it on Trump. And it's going to be a big game changer. Or we might see another industrial military complex assassination. I mean, I'm really serious as well. I'm not just saying that just for a laugh.
I'm totally tracking with you on that. I'm the same. I'm thinking the same way, man.
Well, we're almost out of time, Chris. We've got about a minute left. I mean, a quick message to the people out there who might still have doubts.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the answer to all of this type of thing is just look at your history. I mean, I've just done a new episode of Forbidden TV looking at 500 years of Pizzagate. Pizzagate and all this exploitation and mass murder of young kiddies, that's not a modern phenomenon. That's been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Look at your history, and that will be your guide to tell you whether Trump is actually on the side of the people or not.
Judge him by his actions. That's what I say. And Chris, you'll be back with us for the first hour on Freaky Friday. We're going to get into some space news, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. So, folks, we'll be back tomorrow night, and we've got a brand new guest on the show, and his name is Denver Michaels. He's got a book out called People Are Seeing Something. Myself and Johnny are really looking forward to that one. We hope to see you all back here tomorrow. And remember, Freaky Friday from midnight in the UK, and it'll be 7 o'clock on the East Coast and 4 p.m. on the West Coast. Mr. Christopher Everard for hour 1, and then into the deep blue. So wherever you are, make it TFR.
And didn't touch that dial.